Captain the Coach, episode number 17. And today, Trav, Captain Carruthers, and James, Coach McCracken, we are back and we're discussing a very interesting and potentially contentious topic of work-life balance. Is there such a thing, Trav, as work-life balance? Is it only work? Is it only life? Or is there no such thing as balance? It's a case of being able to apply yourself with a bit of regularity or modulation depending on where you are in your life journey as much as your business and career journey.
Yeah, so this is a great topic, especially for you and me. We've had some conversations and we have a very different position on this particular topic. And I'm going to say that I think your position is probably right. And I've been quite good at reframing my beliefs throughout my career. And this is one that I still struggle with to this day. So I'm hoping through this podcast that I'm going to learn a lot and potentially be able to reframe my beliefs and show I'm going to show a lot of the missteps that I've made along the way and some of the things that I've done to sort of course correct. So I hope the listeners really enjoy this one.
Awesome. So, first things first, I got to tell you, I'm not sure what my position is, other than the fact that it may vary a little bit from time to time. Though I'll kick it off by just reflecting back for well over 20 years ago, about 25 years back. I worked at Hewlett-Packard back then and enjoyed the company immensely before they merged with before they merged with Compaq, and the national HR manager or the director of HR, he was a very big proponent of encouraging people to finish up work at a reasonable time in order to give themselves the opportunity to go and do other things, whatever those other things were. And to his credit, that's exactly what he did. And so he lived and breathed that ethos, and no doubt he, being the director of that division, probably had the opportunity to spend extra hours in the office, but chose not to. So having said that, I didn't necessarily apply those principles throughout my career. There's certainly been occasions when I know for sure when Leslie, my partner, would be waiting downstairs because I was giving her a lift home, and she'd be waiting there for an hour because I was spending extra time doing things that ultimately was trying to help me achieve greater results in my other roles in sales management. So, is that rude to leave her downstairs? The answer is probably yeah. And in hindsight, I don't necessarily feel good about that, but at the time it felt like it was the right thing to do. And so, I'm not necessarily proud of some of my efforts, but I think it probably is part of the reason why we try and identify where is our energy and our efforts best allocated as a person, let alone as a broker.
I have a very, very similar story. When my wife and I first started dating, Virtus was 3 months old, I believe. And I worked so hard. I was working early in the mornings. I was working late at nights. That's all I did was work, right? My work-life balance was so out of balance. And my wife and I have had discussions over the last 12 to 18 months when I've been able to make a shift and there's certain things that I've done, right? And I say to my wife, why did you stay? You should have left. I was so focused on, I was so, my singular focus was on the business that she was just pushed to one side. And it still amazes me that she stayed. Like, I've been able to shift my focus now, and we'll unpack that through the podcast. But it was extremely selfish what I was doing. And to accelerate the business to where it was actually what needed to be done. So I'm sort of like, it was effective, but it was wrong, if that makes sense.
Yep. And I'd go so far as to say that's probably the case with a lot of people, including Nathan the other day when he talked about it, is those early stages. I guess the difference for him is that instead of taking or carving out family time in the afternoons or the evenings, he was doing it during his personal time because he could have been asleep at 4 a.m., but he was in the office. And so I think there's no denying that there's effort that's required to get the rocket ship off the tarmac, as we say, and get it into orbit. And then there's some degree of effort that's required to keep it there as well. And so it then begs the question is there work and life balance, or is it just a case of life balance? And sometimes the balance in life feels right when it's skewed towards work because of it personal endeavors, goals, aspirations, or requirements. Or is it okay that we allocate a bit more time for self-care and self-worth, and that we are feeling like maybe business isn't taking a back step, but for which we're prioritizing the importance of the journey, not just the here and now.
So back to that point you make about Nathan, it's a really good point. Obviously, people listen to earlier podcast. He is someone that I still to this day aspire to be. I aspire to achieve the level of success that he has achieved, not only in his professional but in his personal life. He's someone that I look up to, right? He started his career when he was 20. I joined the industry when I was 32. He had 12 years on me. So I'm never going to catch him. We're similar age. I think we're maybe, I'm 42. I think he might be 40, right? So we're very similar ages. So the way that I could catch him is just by sheer force, by biting down on the mouth guard, doing the hours and getting, you hear those 10,000 hours of mastery, or as Naval will say, those 10,000 iterations. I didn't try and get 10,000 hours in 10 years. I tried to squeeze them into five. Was it effective? Yes. Did it take its toll on my marriage, on my family, on my health? Yes. And now I've had to course correct that, and I'm very fortunate that I still have my family. Just to be clear, my relationship never got into a position where my wife was thinking about leaving me because of the work I was putting in. But there's a really, really confronting conversation a few years ago, and that I had with my wife, and it's so all she did was repeat my words back to me, and it was like the biggest slap in the face. So she's like, Trav, you've built this business to a level that you can now take a step back. I need you to be present. I need you to be a present husband. I need you to be a present father. And I'm like, what do you mean, present husband? I take you out to dinner every week to your favorite restaurant. I don't bring my phone, and I spend the time at dinner just talking to you. She repeated those words back to me. So, Trav, you take me out to dinner once a week to my favorite restaurant. You sit there and we talk. And I'm like, holy shit, that sounds really stupid. I spend an hour with her every week. She gets my undivided attention for 1 hour a week. I said it as I was defending myself, and all she did was repeat the words back to me. And I was like, that is so stupid. I'm like, Trav, how could, like, it was, she didn't have to fight. She didn't even raise her voice. She just repeated what I said. And it was just stopped me in my tracks. Like, it was like a punch in the face. But I think we've all probably been guilty of this at times.
Uh, no doubt. Yep, myself included. And I think it takes a patient and caring and loving partner to create the space for helping us see things differently and give us the opportunity to, as you said, course correct. And I think sometimes the challenge is when we're in the pursuit of goals, that can on occasions change certain parts of who we are. And as you also said, cause us to have the blinkers on that might impact our ability to be present, etc. So then recognizing that there is occasions when we need to work hard, and that, as you said, that will through sheer force get you to a result quicker on occasions. What have you done that you feel has been effective in terms of putting some barriers or some guardrails or some parameters around what you do to help have times in your day, your week, your month that allow you to be dad and husband rather than just going a bull at a gate in terms of growing the business?
One of the things that I've been really successful probably over the last 2 years is my morning routine. I get up at 4 a.m., no alarm, coffee, gym with a podcast, down to the beach, buy another coffee, walk along the beach, get my feet in the sand, go for a swim, get back home. That's 2 hours of my day. The phone's not ringing. It's dark. It's quiet. It allows me to collect my thoughts. It allows me to do some personal development. So initially my wife's like, you get 2 hours to yourself a day. Like this is, so I had to explain to her, this is me being selfish to be selfless. You want me to do this massive day at work so that I can provide for our family. And then when I finish work, I come upstairs, I help cook dinner, I wash the baby, I'm present. Um, I can't do that if I don't have my morning routine. That me getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, it sounds crazy. People are like, aren't you tired? But what it does is it generates energy, it fills my cup, and it allows me to get through the day and then spend the quality time with my family in the afternoon. And you watch, as soon as my morning routine starts slipping, everything starts to fall, everything starts to unravel. I'm less efficient at work. I'm not as present as a husband. I'm not as present as a father. All these things start to unravel because my morning routine isn't right.
Do you have a ballpark time that you tend to say no to clients in terms of I'm not available for you at 7 p.m. or that essentially this is the time when you choose to generally knock off? Again, acknowledging there's might be exceptions, but a bit of a timeline there that you work toward.
I've got my calendar set up so that I think there's 2 nights a week. It might be Monday night and Tuesday night. It's open till later, so we can book in those meetings later if we need to after our meetings.
Yep.
To be honest, it's one of these things that I probably need to be a little bit stricter on myself. What I'm finding at the moment is because of the level of inquiry I got, I'm working nights, I'm working weekends. So what I'm doing is I'm calling the clients on nights, weekends, creating this bad habits for them. And all of a sudden, my phone's constantly ringing. Like on last Sunday, my phone was constantly ringing. And because I've been working all these weekends over the previous weeks, all these clients are now calling me on the weekends. And my wife's like, why are they calling you on a Sunday? And I'm like, I'm getting frustrated. I'm not picking up the phone. But the reality is I was the one that created that bad habit in them. The Sunday before I spoke to them I called them. So I'm creating these bad habits for myself, and now I'm paying the price for it. And it's just one of these things that I've just got to course correct. And
Yep.
it's actually one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about. That that I want to get your insights on this one actually. So, and previously, a couple of years ago, I would put my head down and work 80 to 90 hours a week for 6 months and come up the other side. My marriage wasn't where it should be. I wasn't as present with my kids. There was all these things that I had to go and start trying to fix, right? Now with the business where it currently is, yeah, it still requires a lot of my time. So I've come up with this idea myself and I'm just trialing it. We'll see if it works. We'll circle back on this. I call them sprints. I'll do a 2 month sprint. I'll sit down with my wife and go, babe, I've got a sprint for 2 months. I've got to do, these are the things that we've got to execute on. There's going to be some big hours. And she's like, okay, in 2 months, we're pulling you up. So she will build that support in around me. She'll give me a little bit of leeway. I can't just exit the marriage and exit being a father, but because I've got my morning routine right, yeah, I'm able to be present, but probably not to the level that I would like to be. But I can sprint for that 2 months. I can build the piece of tech. I can build that relationship. I can get through that lead flow, whatever it may be, and come out the other side and go, you know what? Time to take a breather. I'm going to take a breather for 3 months now. I'm going to go back to working 50 hours a week and I'm going to spend far more time and I'm going to be taking days off during the week and those sorts of things. Love to hear what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think everybody has the right to choose what they feel is right for them in terms of again, life and success. And what does success look like as a husband, coach, father? Sorry, coach,
Cool.
as a husband, father, broker, business owner, etc. And uh, and knowing what your criteria for success will help govern what feels appropriate in terms of how much energy and effort you allocate to some of these things. My experience is mostly that people who are working 70 or 80 hours a week, and this is just my experience, is they generally don't want to be, and in most cases they don't need to be. And so it's regularly the case that someone who's doing 70 or 80 hours could probably get away with doing 40 hours effectively rather than 70 hours of time in office. So more time doesn't necessarily mean better output and greater results. I know it can mean that, but regularly it isn't that. And so I think it's important to define what uh, attributes or objectives you're working towards so that you're not just sprinting for the sake of it, and that you can understand if that's a sustainable thing to be working through medium to long term as well. Um, I'm not sure if you're a coaching club that I'd be encouraging you to do that all of the time, to be fair. If that was something that you and I were to discuss, and I'd probably uh, challenge you to think about, well, what's other ways you could approach this? Because if you're going to be in it for 10 years or 15 years, then do you need to be sprinting on a semi-regular basis, or can you not necessarily coast? Because frankly, 50 hours is more than what a lot of people would work anyway. And if that's your wind down week, not your wind up week or wind up period, then Yeah, I'd sort of be interested to look at what are the implications of this in terms of other areas of life.
Yeah. Chris Slater challenged me on this question on this topic a few years ago. I can't remember the broker's name. I'm probably glad because I wouldn't want to out him in this, but he mentioned a particular broker and he said this particular broker has consistently written, I think it was north of $300 million a year, settled north of $300 million a year, but was on his third marriage, I believe. He's like, do you want to be a $300 million a year broker, recycling your marriages every couple of years, or do you want to be a $100 million a year broker with some work-life balance? I mean, it depends on what your drivers are, and
Yeah.
it sort of stopped me in my tracks a little bit. And look, everyone knows me, right? I'm set myself some pretty high standards, and I'm trying to build what will one day be a very big business from my own selfish motivations in a lot of respects. But I'm just trying to navigate that way that I can still have the work-life balance. And it's one of these things. I talk about money buying freedom. I feel like at the moment where I have the money, but I don't quite have the freedom. And when I meet with some of these brokers, we do a little mini conference before our annual conference. There's like 10
Yep.
brokers, a
Yep.
lot of very successful brokers in there. The whole conference, whole national conference is about how to write more volume and how to increase profitability in your business. The little mini conference is about how to work less. These brokers aren't trying to write more volume. They're trying to work less hours. So that whole conversation in this mini conference is completely different to what we're seeing in the industry.
Well, hence going back to the comment about understanding, what does success look like for you, and you talked about this previously, that idea of being an elite, dad, parent, um, husband, broker, etc. I feel like sometimes when our goalposts are too high in too many areas at once, our capacity to reach them, let alone exceed them, is more difficult. And I remember in one instance, there was someone I remember reading about this. Someone at a Tony Robbins conference, and quite frankly, he was you. He was just someone that was just had exceptionally high standards in virtually all parts of his life. And you look at him from outside, and you'd be like, $1 million income, lots of assets, fit, healthy, etc. But he felt like a failure. And the short version is that he had such high standards across so many areas of his life that it was difficult to maintain them or reach them, let alone maintain them. And so Tony just said, "Look, dude, you're allowed to, earn 999 grand, or you're allowed to, have a 2.5% body fat, not a 2% body fat, or whatever the situation was, and just calibrated things a little bit more, which allowed that guy to enjoy the journey rather than essentially being in this position of I'll be happy when, and when was never coming because it was just too hard to get there. And so yeah, I think again it depends on each person's individual goals and aspirations, but I also know that there's plenty of brokers out there where their income, short of them driving a Ferrari or short of them driving a Lambo or living in, or, I mean, if you live in Sydney, you probably need a big income. But yeah, short of living in one of the more affluent suburbs in Sydney and taking out a significant mortgage, as a rule of thumb, there's many good and high performing brokers where the income they earn would be well in excess of what they need to live a good quality of life. And so the fact that they choose to continue growing their income well beyond that means that they've got this surplus cash that they need to do something with, or that they can do something with, which may be then live a more expensive lifestyle, or it may potentially be give them other options as to what they do. But I don't always buy the argument that bigger is always better.
Yeah, you do make a really good point there with the way that you articulate, the way that you describe that particular person, the Tony Robbins. It does resonate with me quite a lot. And it's one of these things. Yeah, I do hold these exceptionally high standards for myself, and I've been challenged by a lot of people and you included, who I highly respect. But then I still can't seem to find where I'm like, when I think about internally, I am so unbelievably comfortable with where my life is. I have an amazing marriage, I have an amazing family. We have amazing experience. I'm not, there wouldn't be a day goes by where I don't tell my wife how lucky we are. So I'm not here grinding away, hating my life. I don't, I love my life, but it's one of these things I do. I think I genuinely enjoy the grind. I've you can't see it in front of you, but I've got all these medallions, these stoic medallions that are sitting in front of me right on the computer here.
Yeah.
And one of them is a an affirmation that comes from Marcus Aurelius, which is I'm reading it right from the coin as we speak. The obstacle is the way, and it's probably the one that resonates with me the most. It's something that I enjoy the challenge. It's something that fulfills me. It's something that's maybe I might burn out at some point, but at this particular point, I'm not uncomfortable with where I'm at.
I'm not discouraging that, and I'll see your quote and I'll up you with one from Sir Edmund Hillary, which is it's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves, which I like that one as well, and
Mm,
similar but different. Anyway, look, I, I I enjoy the grind too, frankly. I really do. There's people that talk about the idea of, I'm not into the hustle and whatever. It's like I don't mind that, really.
mm,
I love my life as well. I really do. I'm extremely happy with where I'm at. The question is probably a case of is our version of happiness necessarily what's valuable for others who are around us? Because sometimes we can, I think, get into a flawed sense of bullshitting ourselves that we're putting in this effort for the betterment of others when the reality is, as I said before, we've got enough income to support other people and do well, yet we still choose to do it anyway. And
mm.
so, and again, that's very subjective as to how other people, or sorry, how we will choose to apply our energy and our effort. I've got one friend who could have retired many years ago and still to this day continues to pursue income producing well, make a lot of money. And well, he doesn't need any of it, but he continues to do it. But he does it because he's just challenging himself, and it's almost like a game for himself only. And yet it certainly doesn't harm anyone when he does it. He's not impacting anyone else in terms of his work life balance. I just think he's got a really bloody good work life balance, and yet he makes 𝐀𝐶∗ and it's really just about can he do it as opposed to I need to do it.
Mm.
And so there's different reasons that we'll pursue things which aren't necessarily monetary related. They might just be a case of learning, growing, challenging ourselves, having fun, making mistakes, and dealing with that. Um, uh, if
It's
we,
funny you mentioned game. So there's a podcast called The Game by 𝗖𝗽𝗁, who, in my opinion, people will talk about him in 20 years' time as they talk about Warren Buffett now. He is such an amazing visionary, and the way that he goes about his business. He's if he's not a self-made billionaire now, he soon will be. But he has this saying: do the amount of work that is unreasonable not to succeed, because his work ethic is through the roof. Different lifestyle to me, right? He has a wife, no kids. His wife works just as hard as him. When you talk about the five love languages, there's a sixth love language which they fall into, which is work. Work is their love language. They live and breathe it, right? And they love it. And that's not me. So I will never experience that level of success, not even close. So there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just around finding what fits for you. And there have been times in my life where the grind was getting too much for me. And at the moment, yes, I do want to work less hours, but it's not taking its mental toll on me. It's not taking a toll on my marriage. Is it sustainable for the next 10 years? No, but it's not going to destroy me in the next two either.
mm, well, again, horses for courses, right? So let's do this. Let's provide a couple of suggestions for our players. And I just want to reiterate players is what we're calling our audience, because if we're the coaches and the captain, then they're on the team. So I would normally suggest people would create some version of a proposed work week, a so-called ideal work week, and not a perfect work week. In fact, so I give people resources around when we do this, Trav, and then regularly, not always, they'll present it back to me and say, hey, this is what I've come up with in terms of how they're proposing to allocate their time throughout the course of the week. And so one of those things will be, look, you know what, if you want to work after hours, feel free, but you're not obliged to, and you don't need to, and most people don't expect you to these days. So that's a starting point, right? And a further comment to that is if you make your availability at these times during the day, you'll find that it's almost certain that people will fit their diary around your availability, not the other way around, where it used to be the other way around, where you'd say to someone, years gone by, pre-COVID, you available after hours? Yes, we are. Great, I'll come and see you. Well, that clearly no longer happens. Further to which, uh, I had this happen the other day where, I would encourage people to start with their big rocks. If you need to take your kids to school, well, you put that in there first. You need to pick your kids up from school, you start with that as well. If you've got, the Tuesday night, swim class with your children, put that in there. If you've got your Saturday morning, sport thing with the kids, or again, put in all of the things that are the immovable objects that are required either for yourself, your family, and so on and so forth. Work your work life around your other commitments. And in the case of someone who presented their diary, if you like, to me the other day, I said to them, look, you know what, you're not going to nail all of this, and don't expect to, because in the nature of what you do, it can sometimes be somewhat volatile, can be a little bit reactive throughout the course of a day or a week in terms of being the broker in between the client and the lenders. And I literally said to them, because it was on a spreadsheet, I said, see everything from lunchtime onwards uh, and down to 5 p.m., just right click and hide those rows for the time being. And if you focus on only doing those things before lunch and you're able to do those consistently, that will be significant progress beyond where you are right now, which is a dog's breakfast. And uh, and the point I was trying to make is, let's not go for perfection here. And I got to tell you, this particular diary didn't look overly perfect anyway. But if we can just focus on getting some wins on the board and build momentum around that, that in and of itself will make a profound difference in terms of how he operates, rather than trying to have this so-called perfect system that you adhere to all of the time, which nobody ever will, and it'd be bloody hard to do. And again, I just want people to get wins and feel momentum and a version of progress and success, and build some confidence with that, uh, rather than trying to have a perfect system that is too difficult to try and achieve or maintain on a regular basis. So anyway, I thought I'd share that tip for our crew, because that's something that I find our clients do quite well, and it gives them the context or the confidence, and also the almost the permission to define how they want to allocate their week, rather than just having it be a little bit ad hoc.
I'm going to ask our players at home to do something now. I want them to pause this podcast. I want them to go back, I don't, maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, however long James spoke for here, re-listen to what he just said. And if it doesn't resonate, re-listen to it again and again until it does. This particular piece of advice that he's giving is the piece of advice that I needed 5 years ago. And this is where I was struggling. I bit down in the mouth guard, and I just did not have the did not have the people around me that were giving me this type of advice. I wish somebody told me this 5 years ago, because it would have made my life a hell of a lot easier. And this leads me, I'm going to give a plug to coaches here, because it's probably one of the things that I didn't do well in my career. I probably should have engaged coaches earlier in my career, because I would have probably been far more along in my business with the right coaches in my corner. And I probably would have been able to get that work-life balance a little bit sooner. I'm going to bring an example that's outside the finance industry, but I think it articulates it really well.
I feel, just quickly, I just want to jump in and say it's never too late, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that, but it'd be a bit silly. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I find it.
Yeah. So I, up until recently, was racing karts, and I just stepped up into a shifter kart. Hadn't raced a thing before. I was probably relatively inexperienced in karting, so I decided to go and I found who was one of the best shifter kart drivers on the planet. He's one of the best drivers in the world, right? And I went and paid. I was paying like $600 a day to get coached by him, and everyone's like, "It's so expensive." And I'm like, "But I'm accelerating my learning. I'm not burning through tires and engines, and I'm getting far better, far quicker." My very first race in that shifter kart just happened to be the state titles, and I finished top five in the state titles. Relatively inexperienced driver in a kart that I'd never actually raced before, and it was all off the back of coaching. It was what he was able to teach me in probably 4 or 5 days. It would have taken me about 12 months of being at the track trying to figure it out for myself every single week.
Yep.
Really, really powerful. And when you think about what I spent, so 6, 5, 3 grand. I spent $3,000 on coaching with him, and was and accelerated my progression by 12 months, I would have burned through five or six or $10,000 worth of tires or engines to get to
Sure.
that point, right? So it was actually cheaper to go and do the coaching than it was to go and do the work myself.
It's invariably the case. I've certainly done this business case, if you like, specific to sales training. Not that I necessarily sort of fly my flag and say all we do is sales training, but in the early days, that is what I did, and it was categorically the case that, and it still is to this day, and it will likely never ever not be the case, that paying someone to come in and provide guidance, advice, and feedback support for the team, even at a premium priced trainer that back when I was at Census, the premium price trainers that we brought in were 10 grand a day, but they could go up to 15K a day. And but you think about the the return on that investment is almost instantaneous in a very large organization, and the opportunity cost is of losing team members or disengaged team members or underperforming team members. Again, back at Census was hundreds of thousands of dollars per staff member. So not for the organization, so tens of millions for the organization, but hundreds of thousands in terms of losing a staff member, retraining, replacing lost revenue that wasn't there because there was a seat to be filled, etc. So it was infinitesimally more cost effective to get support to keep people in the seat and perform well rather than to lose people, replace, retrain, and get people back up to speed. So anyway, that's pretty much the case across the board with a lot of this stuff.
Hmm. Definitely couldn't
Anyway,
agree more.
that was probably a more overt way of me talking about my stuff, which is really not the purpose of this podcast. So hopefully, though, as you said, if they go back and listen to the part to do with the suggestion around trying to define their day, their week a little bit more clearly and putting some parameters around this, and also giving themselves permission to be okay with saying no to some things. I think there's a quote out there from Warren Buffett that is along the lines of why are you so successful? And he says, because I say no to a lot of things. And so that might also be something that our players can take away to assist them in terms of their focus, their energy, and their effectiveness, but also not beat themselves up if and when they're putting in the extra time in the office in order to support their growth, support their journey, and as we already know, is support the other things that are important for them, i.e., family and legacy or aspirations and future outcomes. Mate, is there anything else you want to leave our gang with as we wrap this episode up?
Yep, a couple quick points. So there's no right fit here. Each person's situation is different. When you look at my personal story, what I did was effective. Did it take its toll? Yes. I've learned and course corrected from it. So don't do what I do. Don't. This is sort of sometimes I do what I say, not what I do, or the other way around, depending on what your situation is. And one of the things that I would say is you do with this particular, it can be quite a very selfish job what we do to when you're trying to build a business. So you do need a lot of support from your partner, from your colleagues, from your aggregator in the early days, and from a coach if you decide to engage with them. What I would want our listeners to challenge themselves on and ask themselves this question is, are you prepared to pay the price for what your definition of success is? Because a lot of people want the success, but they're not prepared to pay the price. So this is a little sort of rule that I've come up with myself. So I call it the 210 rule. So when you look at what you're looking to accomplish, it is essentially going to take you twice as long and 10 times the effort. So when you sit there and go, okay, this is my 12-month goal, my 3-year goal, my 5-year goal, think about it's going to take twice as long and 10 times the work. Am I prepared to do the work? And am I prepared to be patient enough to achieve that goal? And if you're not, that's okay. Reset your goals that align with what's truly going to make you happy.
Nicely said, dude. I like that. So we're going to leave it on that note. Thanks everyone for listening in. We hope you got value out of this, and to take that value and get a result with it is now to apply some of the principles that Trav and I have shared. And again, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.